Sisseton, South Dakota. Almost the definition of if you blink, you'll miss it. Unassuming, maybe. But stop for a minute. Brave the cold a little bit longer. Listen, and you'll likely hear a story that starts here, but spans the globe and more than a half a century. It's the story of a Sioux legend, an American patriot, and a fight off of the battlefield to get him the recognition he earned. It's the story of Master Sergeant Woodrow Wilson Keeble. At the edge of town, a right-hand turn off the main road if you're coming from the north, sits a cemetery not unlike any other you would find in a small American town. A short walk from the main entrance is Veterans Circle, where locals who've served their nation are buried. Woodrow Keeble's grave quietly rests among the others. He grew up about an hour north of here in Wahpeton, North Dakota. He went to a boarding school there known then as the Wahpeton Indian School. His father was too poor to raise him and his siblings. His mother died when Woody was young. At the school, he learned about his culture. He was a full-blooded member of the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate, a Sioux tribe that at one time was a warrior and hunter society, moving to where the buffalo were and defending their territory when necessary. Their culture is deeply rooted in these times and is one reason many Native Americans answer the call to arms to this day.
This land that we're on belongs to our people. This is where our relatives were buried, were born, raised. To defend it doesn't bother us. It's a duty for us to do. Something that we're taught is our responsibility since we're just little kids.
Woody's turn to serve first came after the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor. Although he was being pursued by the Chicago White Sox for his reported 100-mile-an-hour fastball, his unit, the North Dakota National Guard's 164th Infantry, was activated.
Some more mail came in.
His stepson, Russ Hawkins, reads an entry from Woody's diary about his first time shooting a Browning automatic rifle.
I didn't do so good on the range today. I only shot a 77 out of a possible 100. I did my best shooting offhand. I would have liked to have fired another 20-round clip. At last I know how much they kick and how they work.
It was the first time firing the rifle, but certainly not the last.
March 17th. It's a lucky thing we shot at the range yesterday because we're pulling out tomorrow. We figure we're going to Australia, but it's just a guess. I hate to think of the long boat ride.
After training in Australia, Woody Keeble's unit took on the Japanese in the Pacific, most notably at Guadalcanal.
As he starts moving into the combat zones, he says he cannot write anymore in his diary because you don't know if the enemy will get a hold of it. So he says he's going to stop writing for now, and that's where the diary ends. The 164th came to assist the Marines to defend Henderson Field. That was of crucial importance in the Pacific as a supply line to the Americans and also the Japanese wanting that airstrip back. They assembled approximately 12,000 Japanese soldiers to take Henderson Field back. And they were going to break in right where the 164th was. They did their research, they knew that this was their first battle. So he was part of a force of 3,000 men that was going to repel the Japanese wherever they broke through. And when they did break through, 12,000 of them came through. The 3,000 of the I Company, 3rd Battalion, met them in 3 days non-stop fighting, bonsai attacks, and alternate night and day fighting. And that's where Woodrow was involved in a lot of hand-to-hand combat.
Despite being an inexperienced unit, the 164th was instrumental in helping the Marines defeat the Japanese. During the fight, Woody developed a reputation for his bravery and skill, things he was taught at his boarding school.
Woodrow probably came from a time period where he was told stories of courage and honor and respect and compassion and giving and what that means.
But Woody, a big man around 6'4", was more than just a warrior. Many who met him off the battlefield were quick to note his kindness.
Fierce as a bear in battle with the cubs, let's say, but is gentle to hold a little baby and put that baby to sleep in his arms.
After the war, Woody returned to Wahpeton to work at the school where he grew up. In 1947, he married his first wife, Nettie. And life seemed to be back to normal. And it was, until 1951, when the call came to protect those who can't protect themselves. And it was something he couldn't ignore. Woodrow Wilson Keeble, a decorated war veteran, was finally back home in North Dakota after fighting the Japanese in the Pacific. But in 1951, his National Guard unit was looking for people to join a new fight in Korea. Woody volunteered without hesitation.
When somebody was asking, why are you going back in? You fought at Guadalcanal, you fought every year of World War II, Bougainville, Henderson Airfield, Guadalcanal, the Philippines, the Solomons. You basically were in combat the whole time of World War II fighting in the Pacific. Why would you go back in? And these were his words. He said, somebody has to teach these boys how to fight.
But beyond his role as a teacher, Woody's friends say his reasons for service reflect those of his ancestors.
It's not for the benefit of tomorrow or next month or next year. My decisions that I make is for the 7 generations to come.
In late October 1951, Woody's unit, the 24th Infantry Division, was involved in one of the last major Allied offensive pushes of the Korean War. The operation later became known as Operation Nomad Polar, but at the time it was known as the Big Push. It was Hill 765, so named for its elevation, where the Chinese Communist forces had dug in deep and where Master Sgt. Keeble became a legend. 3 bunkers similar to these, or pillboxes as they're also called, were on the hill in a V formation.
There were 2 platoons that had become pinned down by these 3 pillboxes.
Several attempts were made to destroy the enemy's position with tanks and planes. Each attempt was unsuccessful.
And it was that time when Woody got into the battle.
Woody's platoon met up with the 2 that were pinned down. All were a part of George Company 19th Infantry Regiment. All the officers had been killed. The other platoon sergeants yielded their command to Master Sgt. Keeble. He had a plan. He would lead 1 platoon at a time up the hill to try and destroy the enemy.
His platoon was the first to volunteer.
They were repelled, so Woody took the 2nd platoon up. They too were stopped. An attempt with the 3rd platoon was also unsuccessful.
So all 3 platoons had gone once. Woody had gone 3 times. The 4th time, he told all 3 platoons to stay put, and he alone was going to go against the enemy.
Men like Woodrow Keeble, Uncle Woody, are very rare in the sense that none of us know how we're going to react under fire or in war, whether it will be terrorized beyond action, will be paralyzed by fear. But we do know one thing about Uncle Woody. He wasn't.
It was October 20th, 1951, when Woody began his 4th attempt, a solo assault on the hill.
He started working his way up to the right pillbox. It would have been the enemy's left, but his right. And before he could get in grenade range, he had to eliminate the trenches of enemy soldiers protecting the pillboxes. I thought he was standing up in the trenches, and I said, why couldn't the enemy just turn their gun and shoot you when you're in the trenches with them? And at that time, he told me how he got down on the ground in the trenches with the enemy soldiers, almost in a kneeling position, and had his rifle stock almost to the ground, and he was on the ground and was shooting at an upward angle.
Woody managed to take out the enemy soldiers in the 2 trenches protecting the pillbox. Then he threw a grenade through the front opening of the pillbox, destroying it.
Then he retreated back to his first line of defense and went to his extreme left, which would have been the enemy's extreme right, in this V formation of bunkers. He then took the second one out the same way through the front entrance, throwing with extreme accuracy a grenade through the opening end where the barrel was sticking out. This left the remaining pillbox on top of the V formation towards the top of the mountain. He entered that one, he outflanked it and came in through the back entrance and blew that up in the occupants with a grenade. First in my mind, I thought he just sprinted up that mountainside like a 10-second, 100-yard dashman. And I asked him, how long did it take you to eliminate those 2 trenches full of enemy soldiers and those 3 bunkers? And in my mind, I thought he was going to say seconds. He just ran here and ran there and ran over here. But it didn't. It took him between 2 and 3 hours.
And the entire time, the Chinese were trying to take Woody out.
He was hit with shrapnel grenades, concussion grenades, a rifle fire. We later found out he took a bullet right through the chest.
After taking out the enemy in the 2 trenches and 3 pillboxes, Woody's fight still wasn't over.
Then he was in a face-to-face showdown. One eyewitness says it was 7 soldiers, another says it was 6, and Woody alone, badly wounded, bleeding from his chest, both arms, both eyes, a calf, nose busted from a grenade that hit him in the face that did not detonate. And in that face-to-face showdown, he eliminated all 6 or 7 enemy soldiers, whichever it was, and they did not get him with a single bullet. And he in turn shot him each once, a semi-automatic, and killed all 7 of them.
After the fight, Woody, badly wounded, refused to be evacuated until a defensive perimeter on the hill was set up. Only then did he agree to be taken away. That's when they removed 83 pieces of shrapnel from his body.
There were so many men later, different quotes from different people that just attribute their life to Woody Keeble. They say, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have made it. He taught us how to survive. He taught us how to stay alive.
For his actions, Master Sergeant Keeble was nominated for the nation's highest honor for valor in combat.
There are required 2 eyewitness signatures to recommend someone for the Medal of Honor. But in this case, every man in George Company, all 3 platoons, signed wanting Woody to get the Medal of Honor.
But there was a problem, starting a chain of events that would take place over the next half-century. October 20th, 1951 was the day Master Sergeant Woodrow Keeble saved the lives of his fellow soldiers, single-handedly taking out an enemy that had several platoons pinned down for days. For his actions, one of the platoon leaders, First Sergeant Joe Sagami, nominated Woody for the Medal of Honor. Every man in 24th Infantry Division, 19th Regiment, George Company, signed the recommendation.
Those orders were lost. So the men resubmitted it the second time for the Medal of Honor in December of '51. And again, the orders were lost. The recommendation was lost. Some say the race card may have been an issue. I don't believe that. I think after talking to men in his outfit that they were just truly lost.
Russ says Woody just did what he felt he had to do at the time. A medal wasn't that important to him.
He was never bitter about it. He was never angry about it. He never seemed real disappointed about it.
After the war, Woody returned home, working again at the school where he grew up. Shortly after, though, he contracted tuberculosis. He went into long-term care at the VA hospital in Minneapolis, keeping in touch with his friends and family back home through letters. Because of his TB, doctors had to remove a lung, which triggered a series of strokes that left Woody partially paralyzed and speechless. Not long after, his wife Nettie died. Woody eventually returned home, but was unable to work. He did marry again to a woman named Blossom Crawford Hawkins, Russ's mother. According to Russ, Woody didn't focus on his injuries, rather on being a positive person.
I think Woody enjoyed the little things in life. I think he enjoyed a good steak, he enjoyed a good conversation, he enjoyed a good movie, he enjoyed just a warm, sunny afternoon. And I think it's the little things in life that he enjoyed that superseded his ailments.
People respected him, men respected him, not just because of his physical size and prowess, because he was a nice person. He was a genuinely nice person to visit with and to be around. Someone that you would feel honored to call friend, a real friend.
And maybe it was because of who Woody was off the battlefield, as much as it was for his heroism during the war, that the fight to get him the Medal of Honor never went away. Several unsuccessful attempts by his friends and family were made in the years to come. Due to failing health, Woody died in 1982, without the Medal of Honor. But the fight for the medal lived on, gaining new life in 2000.
I met with two of Woody's friends. We just kind of talked over coffee, and these guys were getting old. A lot of their friends had passed away, and we thought we'll try one last time to get Woody the Medal of Honor. And the guys said, we'd like to see it. We don't have too much time left. And they said, let's give it one more go.
In past attempts, efforts were made to find the missing paperwork from the original two recommendations.
Then a light bulb kind of went off in our minds as we talked about this. And it was just plain as day, right in front of us. And it was what Joe Sagami had said all the time. The orders were lost the first time. They were lost the second time. They never got to headquarters. So how could we expect headquarters to have a copy of the recommendation if everybody's frustrated because they got lost? By the very nature of them being lost, they're not going to be in a file. They're not going to be under file K for Keeble.
The new strategy was not to try and find paperwork that had been missing for a half a century. Rather, the strategy was to go off the strength of the affidavit First Sergeant Sagami wrote.
And that was the backbone. That was our document, that was our source. It was his signature with an eyewitness, and he identified himself, he identified his rank and where he was, and he was right square in the middle of the battle. And he said if any man ever in the armed service deserved the Medal of Honor, it was Master Sergeant Woodrow Keeble.
People started to latch on to the cause. The submission package grew. Nearly a dozen other affidavits written back in the 50s by other members of George Company were included. Resolutions stating that Woody should get the Medal of Honor were passed by the tribe's government, the North and South Dakota state delegations, and various veteran groups, including the American Legion. Those were added to the package. Federal representatives, including all 4 North and South Dakota senators, also got involved, lending their support. The package, now quite heavy with support, was forwarded to and approved by then Secretary of the Army Francis Harvey. The next step was the Secretary of Defense, but Defense Department lawyers found a problem.
They said, we're back to the statute of limitations. There's a 3-year time period from when the action takes place to when the medal has to be awarded. A 3-year window, and that three-year window is over by over 50 years. So we have to get a law passed to waive that, because he said, I can't proceed with this right in the face of a statute of limitations.
But as Russ says, there were a lot of people involved who swing heavy hammers. In May of 2007, there's a defense appropriations bill that's approved by Congress and signed by the President of the United States that has a line in it for Woody.
What I think is so amazing about the whole scenario, it'd be so easy to say, that was a long time ago. That's all in the past. We've just got to move on. But they didn't say that. Instead, they said, we have to correct this wrong, and we have to make it right. and person by person by person took that opinion.
And on March 3, 2008, the President of the United States posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor to Master Sergeant Woodrow Wilson Keeble. Russ accepted it on his father's behalf.
I'll die a happy man, knowing that Woody got the Medal of Honor.
I almost don't believe it yet. You know, it's just been there forever. The issue of moving this thing, moving it forward, attracting attention to it, and it's happened. And it's. I don't think it's really sunk in yet.
Everything's just still kind of surreal. This probably won't sink in until maybe a week from now. I'm back home in South Dakota, the freezing winds blowing, and all this will kind of sink in.
In your word that there's no greater love than this.
Oh, I think the world of President Bush for doing that. That's how I'll always remember him, and that's how he'll go down in my history books as a president who righted a wrong with Master Sergeant Woody Keeble.
Protecting and defending.
I was so excited because, you know, we'd worked on this for a number of years, and sometimes these things never quite happen just because there's too much bureaucracy. In this case, the story was just unbelievably compelling.
I think he would have said to everybody, you're making way too much fuss over me and what I did. And I think he would be very humbled and very moved and honored, but I think he would think everyone's just going through too much over what he did.
There's no one more deserving than Woodrow of the Medal of Honor, in my opinion. And it's a great recognition by the United States to give this to him posthumously, but in extension, I think it honors all our Dakota veterans that have fought gallantly and maybe have made the ultimate sacrifice.
The Medal of Honor years ago was your eagle feathers. And you would see in a lot of motion pictures and movies the headdresses that, as an individual was on horseback, would touch the ground. Woody would also have a trail that extended on both sides of the horse all the way to the ground.